Gentlemen, I want to show you a case of a 34-year-old, in this case this is a police officer. This is a police officer who works for the city of Reno. We picked up this police officer analyzing all 350 of the police officers and firefighters who work for the city. And what we look for on the routine physicals is we look for the atherogenic triad that Bill Cromwell talks about, Tom, that Peter Toth, who was just up at the lake, your friend, talks about. So in this case, we had two of the elements of the atherogenic triad. We had a low HDL and a low HDL of 31 and a high triglyceride of 362. So we had a very high triglyceride to HDL ratio. This is the guy we look for. This is the guy we think is the most likely guy to fool us, to have some sort of terrible event, be it a heart attack or stroke or type 2 diabetes at a young age, and he's 34. So we look for the people where we can save. The cities are all broke, so we're looking for the people where we can save the most money and have the most dramatic impact. And so this is how we look at them.
So keeping him out of the CCU or the bypass unit might save the city a few bucks.
It saved the city, a young guy, this could save the city about 1.2 million bucks per guy. So here he is when we first saw him, and he comes in with this data, with this traffic light display. His BMI is elevated, but what we've noticed in police officers and firefighters is that BMI, these are strong, healthy guys. This guy doesn't look extremely heavy. He looks like a guard on a football team. His blood pressure is elevated. He doesn't smoke. He's a wrestling coach. He can run for hours. He's extremely fit. His blood glucose is good. His LDL cholesterol is 117. This is true. When this man had his physical, the doctor doing his physical told him, well, your LDL cholesterol is good, lose some weight, get some exercise. He's a wrestling coach. We'll see you next year. And so the focus, as you have both talked about, was the LDL cholesterol, but it wasn't the low HDL and the high triglyceride. This is where he started.
Well, let me jump in on this as a clinician. And first of all, you started with his BMI, which is listed as 33 here. So he's obese. But I always like to remind healthcare professionals that 1 out of 5 people with the full metabolic syndrome, as insulin resistant as you can get, have a BMI under 26. You do not have to be phenotypically obese to have insulin resistance in a metabolic. I've seen docs say, wow, look, I would ordinarily think you're insulin resistant, but you're too skinny. That's ridiculous. So this man is, but you said he doesn't look it, so maybe he's got some muscles in there. But the BMI, we can't hang everything on that. Now, he is hypertensive. That is a criteria for the metabolic syndrome. I suspect his waist size would be a little high, so that's 2 criteria for the metabolic syndrome. You've pointed out he has high triglycerides and low cholesterol. That's 2 more components. I didn't see a glucose parameter here, and that would be, it is, and it's 94, so that's okay. So he's got 4 out of 5 components of the metabolic syndrome. Somewhere along the line, this is the type of guy, if you did a C-reactive protein, it's likely to be abnormal, as would other markers of inflammation. But I, as a lipidologist, know he's going to get heart disease if there's cholesterol in his artery wall. And the only way cholesterol gets in an artery wall is if an LDL particle carries it into the artery wall. So the only thing I really care about is somebody focusing in on his cardiovascular risk is how many LDL particles are in his blood. Because what drives an LDL carrying cholesterol into the artery wall? Particle number, end of discussion. And I know that anybody with a triglyceride HDL axis abnormality, high trigs, low HDL cholesterol, the odds are darn good that he's going to have an astronomical amount, not a moderate degree of LDL particles, a high degree of LDL particles in the high-risk category. That being said, and this case illustrates it, and it's sad that a healthcare practitioner did not recognize the metabolic risk because of what seems to be a not so terribly abnormal LDL cholesterol. But I can tell you, as somebody who's done particle testing for a decade, you can also, and I told you my own lipid profile before 10 years ago, I had a pristine lipid profile and still was drowning in atherogenic lipoproteins, which is, why I believe is the lipid profile is an outdated test and you don't need it. All you need to do is assay lipoproteins. If I need any lipid, it's the triglycerides. But I'd like to point out something simple for a basic provider who may not be doing advanced testing on everybody. If you divide triglycerides by HDL cholesterol, not total cholesterol divided by HDL cholesterol as you have done here, and it's very abnormal, and that is certainly an adjudicated risk factor, but triglycerides divided by HDL cholesterol is the poor man's insulin resistance test. It's the poor man's test of overall mortality as well as cardiovascular mortality. And here's the ratio. Anybody with a ratio of 3 and above. Now, this man has a trig of 360 and an HDL-C of 31. His ratio is 10. This man is at drastically increased risk for total mortality, cardiovascular mortality, the development of type 2 diabetes. He might be a type 2 diabetes even with his fasting glucose of 90. If we did a 2-hour postprandial glucose, it might be above 200. So this man is a total metabolic nightmare that's going to require carbohydrate restriction, a totally different lifestyle than he's doing now. And I suspect he's going to need medication because his lipoproteins are going to be so bad. Now, I don't know. You didn't show them to me yet, but that's my guess. Now, Gary, before we see page 2, maybe you want to comment on it.
No, I'm waiting to see page 2.
Okay.
Want to take a guess on his LDLP?
Yes. Well, no. One
because
thing.
you're somebody who said.
Yes. You know what?
I know your favorite. You know.
Here's what and I instruct everybody from lipidologists to lower level healthcare practitioners. And if you believe you can look at a lipid profile and with any degree of certainty tell me what the atherogenic particle load is, you're deluded. It cannot be done. We can take educated guesses. We're right a lot of the times, but you're wrong. There are lipoprotein abnormalities that'll drive your trigs into the thousands, and you will have a normal LDL particle count. So I don't know. He could have some genetic thing at play.
Guessed within 2%.
Yeah. Well, listen, if you want to take a guess, he's got 2,100 nanomoles of LDL particles. But I'm not going to treat him on my guess.
2231.
2231.
2231. Yeah.
So, and let me reference that for the audience. If you want to be in the bottom 20th percentile of the population, and that tends to be the population that doesn't get heart disease, you must have an LDL particle count of under 1,000 nanomoles per liter. If you have a count of 1,600 nanomoles, you are worse than 80% of the humans on the planet. If you are over 2,000, 2,100, you are worse than 98% of the humans walking on the planet as far as your atherothrombotic risk related to LDL particles. So, and this is all insulin resistant driven, it's carb driven, the mechanisms we went over before, and we need aggressive carb restriction type of lifestyle, and this puts him into the high risk category. And so this is not a patient you can manage with lifestyle alone. Anybody in the high risk and an isolated extreme value of any lipid or lipoprotein abnormality using standard guidelines puts you in the high risk category. Your advice day one is lifestyle and a drug. Now, if he does wonderful with the lifestyle, you can always stop the drug down the road. But this man is so high risk, he goes home on an appropriate LDL particle lowering pharmacologic regimen as well as the low-carb type of diet and exercise regimen. You might advise this person and everything. But I can't tell you how high risk this man is. This is the type of heroic firefighters they find dead at the bottom of the ladder at the fire scene, you know. And it had nothing to do with the fire. It was his metabolic abnormalities.
Do you pay attention to the insulin resistance score? Do you like that score?
Yes, I do. Now, let's define exactly what that is, because, you know, in the last month, the National Lipid Association issued an expert opinion statement on biomarkers. Peter Toth and Bill Cromwell were two of the signees to that. And they told us that there is no data that supports clinicians in the real world from looking at lipoprotein subfractions, be it LDLs or HDLs, whether they're big, whether they're small. No data supporting doing that. But I think they let us down a little bit there. Now, they're right. The only thing that determines whether you're going to have a heart attack is or the most important thing is how many LDL particles you have. It doesn't matter whether they're big or small. You got too many big LDLs, you're going down. You got too many small LDLs, you're going down. But why does Tom Dayspring like to see whether you have big or small VLDLs, small LDLs, you don't have big HDLs? And I'm talking in drug-naive patients here. Because if you have big VLDLs, if you have the small LDL, if you lack the large HDL, you're insulin resistant. And they've done studies that they assign a number to these various parameters. 100, you're as insulin resistant as you can be. 0, you're not. You cross the 50-yard line, you're insulin resistant. And the very interesting thing of this, talk about let's save money. If we started doing this in young people, lipoprotein abnormalities show up decades before the insulin starts going high and several decades before the glucose starts going high. This might be our absolute best marker to be done early in life to determine your child is on the wrong fork in the road going down to be insulin resistant type 2 diabetes at a time when proper lifestyle education would probably solve it for the rest of their life. So I do think this is valuable, but what I must instruct physicians is none of these are goals of therapy. I can cure you and eliminate your risk without necessarily making your LDLs big or your HDLs big. Certain drugs modulate these particles in very different ways, and you will reduce risk even though you might not be doing what you think you have to do to a certain lipoprotein subfraction. So it gets a little complicated, but it's very useful. It's another easy tool. It adds nothing to the cost of the LDL particle count to get this data.
What was his insulin resistance?
His insulin resistance score was 73. Yeah.
And Tom, how is that number arrived at?
Because, and they have an algorithm that they've developed by a big epidemiologic trial where they use the glycated hemoglobin as, are you insulin resistant? And they saw what lipoprotein subfractions appear in people as their glycated hemoglobin goes up. And it's your VLDLs get bigger, your LDLs get smaller, your HDLs get smaller, your small LDL particle count goes up, which will jack up your total LDL particle count. And because when you make small HDLs, they're vulnerable to renal excretion, your total HDL particle count will go down. So the more of those parameters you have, the higher your insulin resistance score is.
Naive question.
How many components do they actually use of?
Well, they use them all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I think that's 6, yeah.
It's 6, yeah.
Why not just-
the LPIR number?
Yes.
Well, each one of those lipoprotein subfractions is weighted, and in their computer, they will come up with an LPIR score, which has been validated against glycohemoglobin.
It's not a mathematical formula then, is
Well,
it?
it is a mathematical formula, but it's heavy computer logistics and things.
Now, I must have misunderstood, but didn't you just imply that the hemoglobin A1C then is
Well,
a very
this-
good measurement of insulin resistance?
Well, this is, is it or is it not?
Well, that's what I don't
Yes.
know. That's
and so this is one of my faults. There's 2 faults I have with this. One, this only applies to drug-naive patients, and most of the people we're doing this on are on drugs. Paradoxically, niacin, a drug that'll make your LDLs bigger and your HDLs bigger, increases insulin resistance but improves your insulin resistance score. And fibrates, which make your HDL small, will worsen your insulin resistance, even though fibrates are one of the drugs that likely improve insulin resistance. So especially if those 2 drugs are at play, this cannot be used to, I'm improving insulin resistance. We have to pick another biomarker, perhaps insulin, adiponectin, something like that. You got glycemic. But glycated hemoglobin is a very late developer in the insulin resistance scheme.
Okay.
So, I just sort of hinted your insulin level is going to be high a long time before your glycated hemoglobin ever becomes abnormal. So I think they validated this against the wrong marker.
What about HOMA IR or euglycemic clamp?
Well, the euglycemic clamp is
It's very
clearly the
involved.
metabolic ward way of diagnosing, but that is not practical
What
in the
about
real
HOMA
world.
IR, which correlates
Well,
pretty well with
it correlates well. I'm sure there's some discordance. I'm not the world's best student on that, but it's a tool we could use. How this would stack up against HOMA IR, if they have that data, I don't know it.
I don't think home IR is very popular with people that are.
No, it's not. It's only used in research studies as
Well,
a
not
poor,
even-
a cheap
but
way
I don't
of.
think it's a real good measure of
Yeah.
what it says it is, though, either.
Why?
Well, it's easier than doing it than a insulin clamp study. Here, it's a simple equation.
So, Tom, we followed your advice. We we like to say to a patient like this, it's time for you to meet Fat Louisa. Fat Louisa is the Pima Indian who's featured in your book. We got him to read Why We Get Fat. We put him. We follow Gary Tobbs. In a patient like this, Gary Tobbs is our guy. We just bought 250 of Gary Tobbs' paperback books so that we can give out the paperbacks to him. And so we have a dietitian who we send this patient to the dietitian. We say, he's insulin resistant, cut the carbs, cut the carbs, cut the carbs, cut the carbs. And the dietitian has really come on board nicely. So we did that. We like to have people doing aerobic exercise, especially if they're police officers or firefighters. So we have them see our Navy SEAL, Bill Land, our Navy SEAL who spent 20 years in cardiac rehab. He starts working with him, and we monitor weight loss, but more to the point, we monitor abdominal girth. And we agreed with you. We were very frightened by this patient. Dr. Scott Hall put him on 20 milligrams of simvastatin every day. That was his choice. And so here he is 3 months later. His insulin resistance ratio, his triglyceride to HDL ratio has dropped from 11.7 to 6.8. Things are looking better. He's lost some weight. His blood pressure has dropped. His triglycerides have dropped a little. We were very worried about this patient. We repeated the NMR. We wanted to know what the particles looked like. The particles went from 2,200 down to 1,589. Now he's not drug naive. His insulin resistance score didn't change.
No, a lot of things are at play. So your mission was to reduce his atherogenic particles, appropriate through lifestyle. Your best monotherapy in the drug world to lower LDL particles is certainly a statin. You used a generic statin in this case, not the world's most potent statin. So none of us would predict it that he could have got to goal with the statin alone. Depending on how well he contributed to the lifestyle, he might have, but you have to start somewhere, and you've seen it. So you've taken him from a very high-risk person with an LDL particle count of 2,100. I previously defined 1,600 as high risk. So now you have him just below the high-risk category with his lipoproteins. So not a bad start, but you have more to go. And now your decision is going to be, you're going to reinforce the lifestyle. That's continuous, seeing the healthcare coach and continuously going over and reinforcing the low-carb diet. But I believe you're going to have to advance your pharmacology here. And now you have the decision to, other than improve lifestyle, to increase the dose of your statin. Well, that's not allowed anymore with simvastatin. You can't go above 40 milligrams anymore. So that's not an option to you. Your option would be to switch to a more potent statin. But I'm going to tell you, a more potent statin will get you a few extra LDL particles, but not much. I personally would add a second drug to this person to attack his LDL particles. The 2 best second drugs that you could add to somebody like this to get substantial additional LDL particle lowering would be a cholesterol absorption blocker, ezetimibe or Zetia, or niacin, in whichever form you like to prescribe it. Many of us go with the extended release because of tolerability. if you're going to use niacin as an LDL particle count, which is really the only thing niacin does to lipoproteins, you're going to need 2 grams of it, and there are issues with that, including its use in an insulin-resistant person with metabolic abnormalities. I would probably use ezetimibe as an add-on to this. Now, one thing I could tell you, if had he come to my clinic day 1, he would have had markers of absorption and synthesis. Many insulin-resistant persons, diabetics, are hyperabsorbers of cholesterol. A hyperabsorber, the cholesterol is delivered to their liver. They stop making cholesterol. There's a downregulation of HMG-CoA reductase. And they tend to be hyporesponders to a statin. You got a pretty good response with simvastatin, so that may not be the case in your patient, but I would have known it day 1. Had I identified a hyperabsorber, day 1 he would have gotten a statin and a cholesterol absorption blocker. But if I wanted to make that choice now, should I go with the niacin or should I go with the ezetimibe? If I did a follow-up sterile absorption test, and statins can worsen sterile absorption, that would clearly make Zetia. The niacin can worsen sterile absorption. So there are other tools that could help you make a better second choice, biomarkers that are clearly not everybody's doing, but I believe the one day the more biomarkers we do, we're going to solve this problem and engineer exact therapies for them with greater precision than we can do now. So you have to address his LDL particle additionally, and you can tell me what you did.
We just kept hammering him.
With a
We had
statin?
him read Gary again.
Okay, you can never enforce the low carbs enough.
We kept the exercise going. He kept losing weight. And we didn't change the statin. We were surprised. His ratio dropped below 3.5, which is what.
Right.
So you're 3. 3 is the number you use. That was the paper. The paper.
Oh, there have been numerous papers that have supported that number 3.0.
in our scheme.
Yes.
But
But you do know in a normal person, a normal triglyceride is 40 to 50, a normal HDL cholesterol is 40 to 50, a normal ratio is 1. I will also tell you this, although that's a ratio that's incredibly predictive, no ratio should ever be used as a goal of therapy because our therapies affect the numerator and denominator differently, and there wouldn't be trials backing up. Changing the triglyceride HDL ratio will guarantee. It makes sense. We're all happy to see it, but I still want to know what his follow-up LDL particle count is.
1026.
1026. And this just goes to show you, even NCMP in their desire to push lipid profiles where non-HDL cholesterol would be their parameter in this guy. If you're on a statin and your non-HDL-C is up, they give you the options to jack up the lifestyle or add a second drug. You guys must have been convinced that he's dedicated to this. You believed him that lifestyle was going to work. You had brought him to below the high-risk territory. It was certainly not wrong to say, let's give you some more time with your lifestyle, and you were proven correct.